Good evening and welcome to the Wednesday evening sit here at Against the Stream. My name is Pavan Bareja and I will guide you through a meditation practice that's based on my understanding of the four foundations of mindfulness. So one of the four foundations is to experience or to know the body in the body, internally and externally. So this is a practice I'll guide you through just this aspect. I've wondered what is the external, experiencing the body externally. And so I'll guide you through this and see if it works for you, and if it doesn't, then you can continue with your mindfulness practice as open awareness practice. So before we get started, I want you to think about someone, at least 2 or 3 people who are, you have a positive experience with them. Maybe a family member, friend, somebody who's alive or who's passed away. Anyone, just 2 or 3 people. Think about who you've had pleasant or positive experiences with them. And we'll use them as we go through the meditation. So I'm just kind of, doing a pre-meditation work basically here. And then think about someone who's neutral in your life. Neutral could be someone, it's not strongly positive, not strongly negative experience with them. And then think about someone you have a very slightly, very slightly difficult experience with. Just bring that person to your mind. The smallest amount of difficulty with them. Okay, so we'll work with these 5 people in our meditation practice today. Does anybody have any trouble finding a person that's positive, 2, 3 people that are positive? Does anybody have a difficult time with that? Okay. So let's go ahead and get started finding your meditation posture. Just sitting on the chair or on the floor, finding the bottoms of your feet, sensing into your legs. Spread your toes out a little bit, wiggle your toes in your shoes, making your feet come alive. Sense into your calves, your knees, your thighs. Sense into your hips. If you can contact your sit bones, sense into the contact with the sit bones, either on the chair or on the floor. Sense into your back. Feel the contact with the chair. Let your spine be free, arising from your sacrum and rising up. Sense into your shoulders, relaxed. Your arms flowing out of your chest. Elbows heavy as they're pulled by gravity. Sense into your forearms and your hands. Sense into your neck and your head, your face. And then come sense into your chest, getting a sense whether your heart, what is going on with your heart space. Is your chest open or closed, tight or open? Sense into your belly. Connect with your breath. Get a sense of whether the breath is deep or shallow. And now imagine you're sitting beside the first person that you have positive experience with. Bring to mind that person. And as you're sitting beside them, sense what happens in your body. Check in with your breath. Sense into your chest and your belly. Sense if the arms and legs are heavier and as they feel more relaxed. As you're sitting beside a person that you have positive experience with. Someone that you like, someone you love, you feel safe with them. Now bring to mind the second person who you care for, you like them, you love them, you feel safe with them. And again, imagine a time you were sitting beside them, you were in their company. Sense what happens in your body. Sense into your feet, your calves, your thighs, and your hips. Sense what happens to your breath. And now bring to mind someone you have a neutral experience with. Somebody at the grocery store you met, or you met someone you sit beside in your office, where it's just a neutral experience. Not too pleasant, not too unpleasant. And just see what happens in the chest. And now bring to mind someone that's slightly unpleasant. And imagine you're sitting beside them and see what happens in your body. If they're sitting to your right, sense on the right side of your body, your arms, your leg on the right. Your chest, your belly. And now let that go. And again, bring to mind someone that's pleasant. The third person, someone you care for, you love. And again, notice what happens in your body. And now bring to mind the first person that you had in mind that was pleasant. Again, imagine you're sitting beside them. You're in their company. And from here, I won't give you any more instructions, and you can continue staying with your pleasant people and sensing into your body, or you can practice open awareness meditation. So let's say our first name and then let's take a 5-7 minutes break. Yeah? So we'll start with you.
I'm Emma.
I'm Greg.
Craig.
Amy.
Amy.
Eli.
Eli.
Sam.
Sam.
Jeff.
Jeff.
Dean.
Dean.
Bar.
Bar.
Christine.
Marie.
Lucia.
Hugh.
Let's maybe do this.
Andy.
Courtney. Leslie.
Joe. Scott.
Scott.
Paul.
Tyrone.
Mike.
Mike.
Noah.
Noah. And you are? Crystal. Amy.
Lauren.
Lauren.
Neil.
Yeah.
Edward.
Edward.
Marty.
Harley. Susan. And welcome. And let's take a 5-7 minutes break. And then, there's tea and there's restrooms. You're probably familiar with the center. And then we'll come back. So let's go ahead and get started. My name is Pawan Bareja. I offer dharma teachings here in the Bay Area and at Spirit Rock. I teach mindfulness, but one of the things that I focus on is how to use mindfulness to work with trauma. So, using some of the Brahma Viharas to work with trauma. So that's one of the things that I teach. And I have I teach POC groups and non-POC as well. So I wanted to ask you, how was that meditation? Did it work for you, not work for you? Any thoughts, any comments? Yes.
I really liked it. I've been struggling with doing loving kindness meditation, but one of my is here. So she's the friend. So it was a lot easier to apply it, and then applying it to the neutral person and the difficult person. Yeah, it was really great, but it's taken me basically like a year to get to this point, because it's just hard to have that love and compassion, because I know that it all kind of goes back to myself, and that's what I'm working on.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, it's an indirect way of coming and applying that for yourself, yes. Yeah, that's great that you could at least apply a little bit of it. You had your friend sitting right there. Yeah, it's wonderful. So, anyone else? Did you notice your breath change in any way? Did anybody, once you sensed the pleasant person, did you feel your breath change? I see some nodding. Yeah, so yes.
I felt a greater awareness of my breath, not that it necessarily changed, but when you told us to look more inwardly with the positive people, I felt more in touch with my body.
Okay. Yeah, that's great. One of the part which I did not take you into, and if you're interested, you can do this, is it's actually helped me with my forgiveness practice. So this is one of the ways that I've done this is when I sense my pleasant people, I sense what's it like to be in their body. So I have my grandmother and my sister-in-law as my most pleasant people, so I sense what it's like to be held by them, by my grandma, and then I felt what would it be like if she, I was in her body and I have a greater expansion. And then I do that for 2 pleasant people, then 1 neutral, and then I do it for my difficult person. And then I sandwich it again with the pleasant people. So again, like if it's something that interests you, that's somewhere you can go if it works for you. It's helped me with my forgiveness practice, like I said. So with that, I wanted to talk to you about a topic which is alive for me, is my belief system. So it's been alive for me as, I've been staying with one of the 4 foundations is, staying with your thoughts in the thought. So, we sense what are the patterns as you're thinking. So we don't get caught in the thought, but we look at the pattern. So sometimes it's recursive thinking, sometimes it's planning, right? So you have those thought patterns come. But what I've been doing lately at the suggestion of one of my teachers is to drop under and sense what is my belief system underneath that thought pattern. And so what I wanted to do is, talk about what is belief system. That's where I got interested in, exploring belief system. So that's what I want to share with you today. And then I'll come back at the end and talk a little more about, again, like if this is something that interests you to sense into your belief system. So we'll talk about that. But I wanted to start with a story that's, very popular story in our Buddhist, in Buddhism is of Angulimala. How many of you are familiar with that story? So we've got 1. Oh, this 2 couple people. This is great. At least I, get to share the story with a lot of you who haven't heard it before. So Angulimala is, Anguli means finger. Mala means necklace. So the name is necklace of fingers. So there was this young boy who was born in this family, very loving parents, and I'll tell you the shorter version, right? You can read more if the story interests you, but I'll tell you the shorter version. And his astrological forecast was that he will be a very terrible person, So the parents got worried. He'll do some terrible things. So the parents got worried and they created an environment that was non-harming, where he learned non-harming and compassion. Now he grew up and he was a very strong man, and he, goes off to study under a teacher, and his parents have, they brought him up with a lot of love and care. So he studies with this teacher, and he's an excellent student, excellent. The teacher loves him, and to the extent that, the teacher invites him to his home, and the teacher is an older person and he's married to a younger woman. So again, our young man, he basically has conversations with the teacher's wife, but he's very respectful. Now the other students of this teacher, they start to get jealous. And so they, create rumors that reach the teacher that this young boy is having an affair with the teacher's wife. And he's also boasting that he is actually more wise than the teacher. So of course the teacher gets really upset. And so the teacher calls this young man and says, your education is done. And as is the tradition, this is, thousands of years back in India, as is the tradition, whatever the teacher asks when the education is finished, that's what the student offers to the teacher. So that's kind of like, the tradition. And then the reason being that if the student is able to fulfill the teacher's wishes, then the student reaches enlightenment. So the teacher asks him, he says, I want 1,000 fingers from the right hand of different people, and I want you to kill 1,000 people to get me the fingers. So this young boy, he's, shocked that this is the request. But the teacher asks, so he goes off and he starts killing people. Now the teacher thought that he will not survive, killing 1,000 people. But he was such a strong person. He was, it seems he had the strength of, many elephants, 6 or 7 elephants, they say. But he manages to kill 999 people, and he makes a necklace with the fingers. And he's going after the 1,000th person. And at that same time, I'll tell you the shorter version. This young man, his mother is coming down the street, and the Buddha is in meditation, and he sees that this young man is going to go and kill his mother for the final finger, and that means that this young man will be in hell realm, so to speak, because that's what happens if you kill your own parent. It's the worst thing, it seems, that you can do. So the Buddha also sees that if he does not kill his mother, he will become a great monk. So the Buddha he uses his powers, and he goes in front of this young man, and he, calls out to him. So the young man, instead of going after the woman who he did not know, he didn't realize was his mother, that he was going to kill, he goes after the Buddha. Now the Buddha is walking, and this man comes running behind him, and the Buddha uses some psychic abilities that the Buddha keeps walking at a normal pace, but this man is running and can't catch up with him. So he calls out, he's like huffing and puffing. If finally this man, Angulimala, says to the Buddha, stop. And the Buddha continues walking at his normal pace. And the Buddha says, no, you stop. So he's kind of like, what is going on with this man? He doesn't understand. So finally, he says to the Buddha, stop, stop. And the Buddha tells him, you stop, right? This goes on for some time. And he can't catch up with the Buddha. So he finally says, what do you mean by that? And the Buddha says, no, you stop, because you have this belief that you will kill 1,000 people and you will reach enlightenment, because that's your offering to your teacher. So you have to stop. And Angulimala awakens in that moment. He realizes, now this is my interpretation of the story, he realizes that what he's doing is following a belief system which he did not question, right? So he realizes that, and he realizes that he's really, this is a tradition in the Indian system, that you offer whatever it is that the teacher asks. And he literally had to set his judgment aside to follow this. So he realizes what he's doing, and it's a very horrible thing that he's doing. So he wakes up, and he then asks the Buddha to become a monk. And it seems he goes on to be a very, very, he becomes enlightened as the Buddha's monk. And, so there is a whole sutta about Angulimala. It's called the Angulimala Sutta, and I'm not going into that, but I just wanted to stop at this part because I wanted to talk about what is the belief system that was underlying here, And it's, also you can see what is Buddha's belief system of compassion, right? He realized that compassion can wake Angulimala rather than some form of punishment to wake him up, right? So similarly, I got this email, I'm sure all of you got this email as well, which touched me, where this was from the Against the Stream teachers. And they say, as Buddhist practitioners, we too strive for a world of harmony, a world where not causing harm is a core tenet. We also commit to waking up to the truth of reality and clear seeing. What is evident in our country right now is a widening fissure of injustice. With this in the forefront of our minds, it is prudent for Against the Stream Buddhist Meditation Society to say loud and clear that we stand against greed, hatred, and delusion as was taught by the Buddha. Against the Stream commits to stand unwavering in opposition to the surge of violence, to ally with those who are oppressed, and to be a refuge for all. So with this, we see what is our belief system here. Here at Against the Stream, as you sit here as meditators, it talks to your belief system, your values of shining light, the light of your awareness on greed, hatred, and delusion, on non-harming that is our value, and that we stand for those who are oppressed, and we are refuge to all of them. That is what we here as meditators, that's our value system. That is our belief that we stand for these values, right? So similarly, they also, in this same email, they talk about this torch-bearing march of Unite the Right and other supremacist factions. They too have a belief system. It's a belief system where the pigmentation of the skin gives you a higher or lower position, right? So that is also a belief system. It's based on an older way of thinking because it's a belief system that worked for some of our forefathers in this country, right? Economically, politically. So that's why some people still carry that, but it's a belief system. And so for us to recognize that is also a belief which is causing this much of suffering in our society today, so that we can shine our light of our awareness on these. Because I truly believe that when we have beliefs which are unchallenged, just like with Angulimala, he did not challenge his teacher. He just went ahead with that, okay, this is what the teacher asks of me. Culturally, this is what's done, where whatever the teacher asks, the student offers. And hence he went ahead with that belief system. He followed that belief system and caused so much suffering. It's when you have these beliefs within you which are unchallenged, they cause a lot of suffering for ourselves and for others. So I just wanted to check in with you. Is what I'm saying, does that make sense to you? Okay. Because I don't want to kind of at the same time, I believe in these things passionately, but I also want to honor your wishes here. So, now that, I've talked about belief systems in the Buddhist story of Angulimala, talked to you about Charlottesville, what we in Against the Stream, what our beliefs are, what our values are. I want to now come into the personal level. How do we apply this in our life, right? I mean, that's what's most interesting to me, is how do you take this and apply it in your life? So I want to tell you a couple stories about two people. So one of them is about a friend of mine, Janet. I'm a cancer survivor, so I'm still a part of this cancer support group. And she's somebody who had metastatic cancer for almost 10 years. She passed away just earlier this year. It's been a very big loss. And she had a thriving private practice as a pediatric doctor. She was very vocal about the rights of cancer survivors, and she had strong political views. And she also believed in enjoying life fully, and she was very active. So she organized a lot of, she organized some of us women to go. I wasn't one of them, but they went and climbed Mount Shasta, and they climbed Mount Whitney, which is the tallest mountain here in California. And you know, she was also a snowboarder, so she would, you know, basically go to different places to get the, you know, wherever there is snow, basically she would go. So I was thinking today, I was writing her eulogy for her parents, and I was thinking, what is her belief system? What was her values? When I look at her life, it really was to live life fully. You know, she's written her stories, she's read them in different book readings, she's been in part of fashion shows, you know, and that's what she was doing, is like, that whatever is her illness, that does not define her. That's what I saw in her, and still inspires me to see somebody who's lived to that extent. And then I want to also share with you a second story of a client, and this is someone who I have permission to share their story. This person has grew up with a depressive mother and a rageaholic father. And so the way they survived in that environment, the way this person survived in that environment was by being invisible. So now, as she's grown up, one of the things that happens is that she does not realize her full potential and live to her full potential, whether it's in her work or in her personal life. So unless someone is coming on very strong, she does not realize just how beautiful she is, you know, because of that mask of invisibility. So that's again an underlying belief system that she has worked with for a long time to start to inhabit her body, to inhabit her life, because that invisibility has been such a strong part of the belief system, right? So with that, you know, I wanted to check with you. So actually, before I do that, I wanted to also share, you know, when I was talking about my own practice, where I see recursive thinking going on sometimes, and I have a pattern I've seen in my own thoughts, then I'm now starting to drop below that, because it's harder to see my own belief system. Dropping down below that to see what is my belief. And one of the things that I have, as I've discovered, is that I have a lot of fear and a lack of safety, which makes sense given my own history. So then, once I realize what is below the thinking, the thoughts, then I can start to work with that underlying lack of safety. Checking in my own body, checking my environment to see right now I'm safe and it's all okay right now. And if it is not, I'll take steps to bring safety for my own self. So I just wanted to share that aspect with you, and also wanted to, you know, check in with you how you have worked with your belief system. And also, you know, like we are getting ready to have a big weekend of marches in the city this weekend. So I wanted to check in about that as well with you. But first, I wanted to check with you, have you ever been curious about what is your belief system? And, if you have been curious about that, how have you worked with it? And, how have you challenged it? So I'm interested in knowing that. Yes?
It's a really great question and a really fantastic topic and really hard to see. So I have PTSD and couldn't even really work with the mind until about 8 months ago. And I've done a lot of work with the third foundation of mindfulness and sitting in open awareness. And just having this constant question in my mind of, is that a thought? And what I came to realize about 3 months ago was I had this profound feeling underneath the thoughts that was like my emotions were unsafe, like any kind of emotion. It's like I was trying to hold it. It wasn't even like a narrative thought. It was like a pressure, like I was trying to hold it down. And it was really, it got to a point where it got pretty excruciating, and I'm not embarrassed to say I go to therapy because that's what you do when you have PTSD. My therapist and I actually did EMDR with it. And it was, I've done EMDR a couple of times on like the big events in my life. And those of you who don't know, eye movement desensitization and reprocessing. It was like going through the 10 worst memories I had ever had. Really painful. And then a week later we did the EMD process. And then we had another week of processing after that. Then went back to our normal talk therapy. And as part of the process, you find a replacement kind of belief. And so we were working with this replacement belief of it's okay to be vulnerable. And since that session, I've used that phrase with myself whenever I regularly have just general anxiety. And it's not spinning thoughts in my head. It's like anxious energy in the body. My body is so used to being hypervigilant that it's having trouble letting go of habitual physical patterns. But it's been really helpful, like that combination of those two, to be able to be like, no, it's actually okay. But I've had to be really diligent with it.
Yes, yeah.
Now that said, like, that's for like the trauma stuff. On the other hand of things, I've taken to just kind of watching my thoughts, and then when I catch one, just being like, just instinctively drop the narrative and what's actually there. And for me, that combined with the Tonglen practice and the low jump slogans has been really useful, because then it's like, oh, part of me is really scared. Or part of me is like really, sometimes I have this impression of this little 3-year-old just bitching fit in me. And what would I do if that was a person outside of me? Well, of course I would grab them and hug them and try to say something soothing. And I didn't do that for myself. Yeah. Anyway, that was the long answer, but...
No, but thank you. Thank you for sharing.
Done quite a bit with that.
Yeah, no, that's beautiful. It's beautiful. And, when it's not challenged, when those beliefs are not challenged, it causes suffering. But once you challenge them, as I hear you say, there is possibility of freedom. So at least you have moments of freedom. And that in itself is worth the effort. So anyone else? Yes?
Okay, so I'm having difficulty. I really wish I could sort of just change my belief system. Let's say, like I have this question, how long will it take until I can be okay? And the answer well, I don't know what the answer is, but the answer might be too long, whatever that means. I don't know how to, like, I don't know how to work around my, like, preoccupation or fear that it will take too long for me to be okay, my life will just be over.
You know, when I started working with my own stuff, I had similar thoughts, and because I had seen other people working a long time. But what I've found is that even having those moments of freedom, and when I recognize them consciously, that the liberation from that is just so sweet. And what we don't do is we notice when things are painful, but then we tune out when things are going well. So just being awake to those moments when you have, you know, you're reaping the fruits of your labor, basically. Those are the moments, and you know, they will, over time, they will expand, and then soon there'll be days and weeks and months when things will be open for you. So that's all I can offer. But it's one of those. That's why we call it practice. You know, it's not a reaching the end, but that's the best I can offer.
Yeah, I mean, I think that maybe this is actually a separate problem. I probably compare a lot. I mean, okay, so coming to groups like this, like I'm on the young side, even for Against the Stream, and so people say, oh, you're young, it's so great you're doing this. Some people are 120 and they're still working on, they're like, you know, behind you or working on stuff. Like, great, I don't want to wait until I'm, you know, really old. And then also, like, I see the outsides of all the people around me, and I feel like I'm walking through a land of plenty and I'm just suffering. I know that might not be accurate, but like comparing also sucks.
Yeah, there's, you know, we don't know what your future holds. You know, I don't have the clairvoyance, but all I can say is, you know, I mean, whatever it is that you do, it always has a ripple effect. I truly believe in that. That each one of us, when we are dedicated to our working on our stuff and our awakening, it has a ripple effect. And I mean, right now in our society, there's just so much that's going on. It's in our face. So there is absolutely, like, for me, there is no option but to work on my own things, my own hidden or unseen issues, and to bring them to light. You know, because if I am going to criticize or judge someone else, I need to do my own work, is how I look at it. You know. So that's the best I can offer. Yeah. So, yeah.
I'm a bit older than most people here. When I was 7, my mother was killed in a horrific car crash. The entire family was there. And for years and years and years, I was angry and did not know why. And thanks to a wonderful therapist, I was able to discover the dharma and begin to meditate and so on. And what I've found is that it is never too late, never, to begin to find meaning and to, yeah, that's it.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for sharing. I'm really sorry for your loss. Yeah. Yes.
You had asked us to think of somebody close, and I searched for a moment or two, and then somebody near, and then somebody far, somebody I'm having troubles with. And I picked the same person between the far and the close. Because I can kind of see, they're almost like kissing cousins, because the close ones are the ones that are helping me get past some of my shit, which I bounce on, and then I get like reactive, and so it's a good teacher. So
interesting.
My nemesis has become my angel, so to speak. but it's not always like that.
But that is intense practice, really. I mean, I would suggest do a simpler version and separate the people. It would be easier to do the practice that way.
Yeah, but it was sweet though, that there wasn't that grudge or that angst at the time when I was actually practicing sending out good vibes and having good vibes from them.
Okay.
And on the other side, I was respecting the hurt that was caused from that, but I didn't take it personally.
Okay.
But it was like the same person.
Yeah. Now that I hear you've done your work, and there has been some, not just some, like a lot of liberation there.
It was interesting to see the mind pick that. I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Interesting. Yeah. But that's, like I said, it's also your practice. You have done some work that your mind could pick this person in just the positive, and the whatever they've done to hurt did not filter in that moment, So just want to acknowledge that also. Yeah.
I
Yes.
actually had a similar experience, except I wasn't able to filter. So I took that person as positive, but then the negative filtered in, and then I was like, okay, so it's not positive, it should go in the negative. But when it was a negative, it was like, no, not really, it is positive. So it really confused me, actually.
Yeah. That's why, maybe I didn't speak about it clear enough, where, it's easier if you just take like a moment in time and freeze frame the person over there. But it's always also, it's easier if you pick a person that has been positive and is positive. It's easier to do it that way. And if suppose somebody like, for me, my grandmother who's passed away, so I've had positive with her, and then it ends, right? So that's an easier person to pick in terms of doing this practice. Yeah, but pick someone who's positive all the way through. Yeah, I know there is not that many. That's why I gave the example of my grandma. Yes. Though there may be some people, like,
No, but I see what you mean. For some people, it's clearer than others.
Yeah, for some people it's like 90 or 99% they're positive. Yeah. So anyone else? Yes.
I want to talk about beliefs. One of the beliefs that I've been working through is the idea that it's my job to protect and care for everyone around me and keep everybody happy. I was raised by an abusive father and a very passive, gentle mother and a little sister.
Mm-hmm.
And so I kind of felt like it was my job to protect everybody and also to sacrifice my well-being and safety for theirs. Like, I really didn't care if I had to be like the heat sink for the abuse as long as they were okay.
Yeah.
And so I've kind of internalized this idea that like my safety and happiness is totally expendable and like whatever, disposable. But if anybody around me is even the least bit unhappy or uncomfortable, like I'm failing. So I've got sort of this hypervigilance around other people's well-being and like a sort of paradoxical disregard for my own that I've really been sitting with a lot and like having to kind of tone down this hypervigilance that I have for like, is everyone okay? Is everyone like, is anybody unhappy?
Yeah.
Because that's completely impossible
Right.
thing to accomplish, and especially if like any unhappiness around me is a my failure, like that's completely an impossible way to live.
Yeah, that's such high standards to live by. It's that's difficult to do, because it's it's like there'll be definite failure in that.
Always.
Yeah, always. Yeah. But I'm glad like for you to even see that belief system and to kind of like maybe over time soften around that. That in itself will bring some.
It's amazing how powerful that condition is.
Absolutely, so powerful. Because when you're young, your parents are the only models that you have. So they're your gods, right? You follow whatever is, you absorb what's in the environment. Yeah. But to change some of that over time brings some softening. Yeah. So, You know, I also wanted to check in with you about, you know, there is going to be the marches this weekend, and, you know, just any thoughts or any comments about that? Yes.
I was just thinking, you had mentioned the weekend, and I have this sort of dilemma showing up on Saturday down at Crissy Field. Do I carry a bouquet of flowers and plan to put flowers in the end of people's guns, or do I go in full Antifa gear? I honestly, I mean, I know I'm probably supposed to have the answer to that, but I like to sort of like at least wonder about it, and I'm not bothered by it. I have no idea what I'll do. I really don't know.
Yeah, no, I mean, and that's why I wanted to bring it up, because, you know, how do we practice with that, right? So, I mean, that is really my question is, you know, as you have this, how do you practice with that? You know, from what I hear, it's a don't know mind that you're holding just now, you know, but it's underneath that, you know, what are the emotions that rise in you, and how do you practice? How do you hold those? Because that's what we are here for. That's why I brought up this topic, is because it's not so much as the action as much as what is going on inside of us that we work with, right? So that's my question is, you know, like, how do you, you know, you speak about the don't know mind, I don't know what I will do. And, you know, you will know in the moment when, hopefully when Saturday comes, you'll know what to do, whether you go or you don't go, and whether you go with a bouquet of flowers or you don't, right? So you'll know at that moment, right? But what's the emotion that's underneath, and how do you work with that is, you know, also a question. Yes.
The mayor of San Francisco, Ed Lee, made a statement today in which he said, don't go, and they will have no audience, because it's clear that they are looking for opposition, and if nobody shows up, what are they going to do? Now, probably many people will show up, but you have to think about how your actions are falling into a belief system whereby they can oppose you, and that gives them an excuse to use their violence. Even though they claim it's just going to be a prayer meeting, clearly some people are going to show up looking for ways to be violent. And if you don't go, who are they going to be violent against? Mm-hmm. Anyway, that's my position. I'd rather sit home and do Tonglen with them.
Okay.
And not stir my anger and hatred in myself.
Yeah, and that's an important piece. Like, you know, I mean, even all the events that we are seeing, they bring up anger, they bring up hatred within ourselves. How do we stay? How do you work with that? So, you know, you talked about doing Tonglen with that, but, you know, I mean, that's what I'm interested in, is how do you, because the anger just begets more anger, right? You know, what's in our heart, then that just increases and it spirals out. So how do you work with those feelings? That's an important, that's my question also for you. Yes?
A lot of people have mentioned the anger behind this, the emotion being anger. And to me, that's really not even, that word doesn't really capture it. I feel like, speaking for myself, but probably other people can relate, it's really more rage. You know, there's a lack of control, and you can be sitting on your sofa by yourself reading stuff on the internet, and it's rage, you know. And so that's just sitting on your sofa. Now imagine you're in a situation where you're, you know, nobody's perfect, so you put yourself in a confrontation or something where things become more heated or whatever. It's a very volatile situation. I'm not really suggesting any answers except to acknowledge that that volatility, and it's probably on both sides, and I'm not making any kind of, equivalency here, but except to say that the rage is sort of the same fundamentally as a human being. That's not a healthy emotion. It can
Right.
be useful in certain, limited circumstances, but you gotta really watch it.
Yeah.
So.
And the how it's not healthy. And I mean, there is a whole physiology of how it affects the stress level increases in our system, and then it stays high. And so how do we use our Buddhist practices? How do you come back into your heart space? Because that's what we did today in our meditation, is we worked with opening up our heart space, but we worked with it in our body. So my question is, are there any practices that you have that are self-care for you as you go and you face the events, not just of the weekend, but of this country in this time? That's what I'm interested in. We talked about your belief system, but this is the other aspect. How do you do your self-care in the midst of these intense emotions in this country right now? Yes.
I really like to think sometimes of a Friedrich Nietzsche quote about one does not kill through wrath, but through laughter. I think it reminds me a lot of what a lot of Christians talk about, where it was turning the other cheek. And I think about looking into, watching an interview with someone who's really convinced that he's got a quite small, angry world that involves the skin pigment hierarchy and whatnot. And to kind of look at it and have the privilege to be able to laugh a bit, to see that how much larger my world is when I'm not cut off from seeing people in these predefined boxes, but being able to learn from their characters, their struggles, their moments where their eyes sparkle and they grow up a bit. And you grow through that, and just, I want to go there with the flowers and look at someone who's shouting this and being able, to really just kind of laugh, but with hopefully not, through wrath, but come on, man, wake up a bit. What do you, why are you shutting yourself off to all this, to how big the world is and how small the way is making it. I do think that there comes a time, perhaps, in the 1930s where you have to go, not with the flowers, but, prepared to acquaint the fascist heads with the pavement. But I really am thankful that I don't think we're there right now.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that we'll stay farther away from that space and perhaps, prevent it by going with the flowers and being able to laugh at it, both for ourselves and for this person.
Yeah. So I know the topic is very charged. I brought this up, and I have some time. I do want to bring us back into a space which is where we leave with our heart more open than, rather than just stay with this conversation. And it affects my heart to have this conversation. But at the same time, if we don't have a difficult conversation in our Sangha and talk about how do we as Buddhists, how do we shine the light of our awareness on greed, hatred, and delusion, as the teachers said, then our practice is only on the cushion. This conversation is so that we take our practice out into the world. So let's take a few moments and let's bring the first part of our meditation, where we sat beside a person who is positive. Let's try to bring that back with us. Yeah? Let's see if that can shift some of the space that we are in internally. So again, come find your sitting posture. Sense into the bottoms of your feet and press your feet into the floor. It will tighten your calves and your thighs and then release. Press one more time, tighten, and release. See if it affects your breath as you do the release. One more time, press into the floor with your feet and release. Again, straightening your back, pulling your shoulders back, let your arms rest. And again, bring to mind a person that you love, that you care for, that you mostly had good experiences with this person. They've loved you, they've nourished you. Imagine a moment, remember a moment in your past when you sat beside them, when you were in their company. Bring to mind that moment. See if you can hear their voice, or just sit beside them. You're safe and loved by this person. And just see what happens to your breath, what happens to your chest, what happens to your belly. You're held in the loving awareness of this person. They care and they love you, and you're safe with them. Just see what happens in your body as you sit beside them. I want to dedicate the merit of our practice this evening to the benefit of all beings. May everyone's heart be open, filled with calmness and compassion. Thank you for your kind attention. I'm here if you want to ask me any questions.